Chinese prostitution ring was busted here in Washington, D.C., and then it just went away. Her client lists were politicians, government officials, and lobbyists. And the next week, he couldn't find it. The black book, everything was gone. The political nature and just the evil corruption that this town is about. I just don't think we're ever going to get to the bottom of all of it.
You're under the impression it is extraterrestrial life.
Do you think we're the best that God can do? We are one grain of sand in a billion beaches.
Have you seen anything?
Absolutely.
Can you talk about this publicly?
Absolutely not.
Today on Capitol Hill, some of the biggest questions about power in America are colliding all at once, from everything from the Epstein files to blackmail to corruption and even insider trading. Now, we're hearing more from lawmakers themselves about how power actually works behind closed doors here in Washington, D.C. And as investigations ramp up around Epstein related files and political connections, questions are being raised about who knew what and who might be exposed next. Now, at the same time, federal regulators are actively investigating trading movements that are tied to policy decisions. More on that with Tim Burchett in a second. He touches on that in our interview as well. And I think what's also interesting is Trump's response to insider trading. Take a look at this clip.
That all Americans can profit from a rising stock market. Let's also ensure that members of Congress cannot corruptly profit from using insider information.
Now, what's probably the hardest to ignore right now, even with everything going on, is the current scandal regarding the Epstein files. Now, at one point, the Trump administration had claimed that they released everything, but Trump's current acting attorney general recently said that he won't release even one more Epstein file, even if they do exist. Take a look at that clip here.
You have the authority to go ahead and release more, do you not? And you have the authority to go to Congress, perhaps?
No, we have released everything. So listen, we reviewed 6 million pieces of paper. What we released was anything associated with the Epstein files. So there, we are not sitting on a single piece of paper. Nothing that should be released.
Now, even if that wasn't enough, Trump is still teasing the release of classified UAP documents. Now, some online are saying that this is a major distraction from things like the Epstein files themselves, but it's still interesting nonetheless. Take a look at this clip.
He made a big mistake. He took it out of classified information. No, I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it. Do you believe it, Peter?
Well, the president can declassify anything that he wants to, so if you want to make an announcement.
I may get him out of trouble by declassifying.
Now, with all of this happening in the media, a lot of people rightfully feel that there are a lot of smoke and mirrors right now. So to talk to us today about all of this, I am bringing on Republican Congressman Tim Burchett. Enjoy the interview. How's it going, everybody? So I am joined today by Congressman Tim Burchett, and he's here to talk to me about a variety of things. But first and foremost, Congressman, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, dude. It's a big honor. I'm a big fan of TMZ. Harvey's and Charles have been very kind to me. So they laugh at me, but it's cool.
Well, you and your team have been very hospitable, so thank you.
Thank you, brother.
To get things started off, the Epstein files have been a topic of discussion for millions and millions of Americans for quite some time now. Now, obviously, you're someone of high standing in the House of Representatives, and and I'm wondering, are there any things that the media is not reporting on right now with regards to is there any tension in the House of Reps regarding the Epstein files?
Sure.
And the people that don't want them out, what could the incentive for them not being released be?
First of all, I've been raising Cain about that for the last 4 years. Now it's everybody all of a sudden, the Epstein files, but they've had them since in previous presidents' administrations and put them in the courts, and everything's been sealed, and that's on purpose. I honestly don't think when everything's out that people are going to be satisfied, because I'm not going to be. I don't believe it. I don't believe that the files haven't been tampered with. When the political nature and just the evil corruption that this town is about has been for quite some time. I just don't think we're ever going to get to the bottom of all of it. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and just because it's in the files, because Epstein put it in his files, doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. And I would warn people too that now there's kind of an effort of some of the girls. They were girls then when they were abused, but then at some point they went from abusers to recruiters, apparently, for Epstein. Now, do they get a walk because of their abuse, or, you know, I've said that's up to the ethics people and the lawyers to figure that out. You know, and under Chairman Comer, though, who's the chairman of oversight, he had released, I believe, 10,000 files or something, and they were methodically going through it. And then immediately, what happened when we this rush to throw everything out, which I support transparency. Some of the girls who were girls then are now ladies who wanted their names redacted got out. And I think sometimes we had an old saying when I was in the Tennessee legislature, a very wise attorney who's now a judge, I believe, he said, you know, we need to go a little slower so we can get there a little faster because we're having to go back and redo things. So honestly, I don't ever think we're ever going to get to the bottom of it.
When you say evil corruption, what are you referencing in particular?
Just the very nature of this town. You know, you see people that in office steal money. They use their job or their power to sexually abuse women because of the power they have over them. And it's nothing new. It's nothing new. It's since the dawn of time. You know, this town's full of dirt bags, and we continue to elect dirt bags when 12% of the population goes and votes. You know, I consider myself an evangelical Christian, and 40% of evangelical Christians don't go vote. I'm a gun owner. 30% of gun owners don't go vote. But will they raise Cain about some issue? Heck yeah, they will. And they have that right. But my point is that they need to step up to the plate. And you know, we don't teach civics in school like we used to. We're doing a very poor job at a lot of this stuff, and this is what we get.
I'm wondering if you think that, you know, you said that this town is full of dirtbags and it's full of corruption. Do you think that corruption leans more to one side of the political spectrum than the other?
Well, of course, as a Republican, I think both parties are crooked. I just think the Democrat Party is a little more crooked. But, you know, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's amazing to me that it's not amazing to me. It's, I guess, somebody asked me what my biggest surprise was when I got up here, is that I was never really surprised about any of it. I spent 16 years in the Tennessee legislature, and I had friends there that had committed suicide, went to prison, got beat, lost their families, lost everything. And, you know, so up here, why would it be any different? It's like my wife says, it's like the junior high school with a big checkbook. And not everybody. There's a lot of people up here that are here for the right reasons. It meant my friends on the left and my friends that are conservative like myself. But just the ability of insider information, of graft, of power. And the best thing I ever had growing up in life was that we didn't have a lot. My mom and daddy were career educators, and we grew up in what you'd call middle-class suburbia. And I had a huge mortgage on our house, and I think they stroked $400 a month, and they finally paid off their house that we lived in, the only house I ever lived in growing up. And I was around a lot of people that had money.
Interesting.
And we never had it. And, you know, we had cars. Daddy always made sure we had a transportation, but we learned how to work on those cars. And Daddy was a mechanic before the Second World War, if you can believe that, before he went and fought in the Pacific, fought the Japanese. And so I appreciated folks with money, but we never had it. And so when I got into college and I was in a fraternity, I drove a lot of nice cars, but they weren't mine because they started enforcing DUIs, and I don't drink. And so they would take me over. My fee was for chili dogs from the old Smoky Mountain Market if I had to drive some of these drunk-ass guys around in their very nice cars. And I drove BMWs and Porsches and nice Camaros and things like that. Or as we say in East Tennessee, Camario. But, you know, and then when I got to the legislature, the draw wasn't there. for me to be pulled into the, those circles. And if whatever your thing is, or if it's men or women or drugs or drink or liquor or cash, it'll find you if that's your proclivity. And I just I was never caught up in all that. I was never trapped in that web.
Touching on your point about money, something that you briefly mentioned was that money has the power to corrupt.
Absolutely.
Seems like a lot of that has been going on within the House of Representatives, and been made, more apparent to the public eye in the last decade. I feel like more now than ever. And you also mentioned that there are certain circles within the House of Representatives that abuse that power. Can you tell me about those circles and how they operate?
Yeah, I'll tell you how it used to operate. You go on a trip, or you're here at a motel at a cocktail party or something, and you're sitting at the bar, and an attractive lady comes up, and you buy her a drink, and she's laughing at your jokes, and she's laughing at you and touching your shoulder, and then she touches your knee, and the next thing you know, you're up in the motel room with her naked. And then and you think, wow, I just pulled off the ultimate crime. The family back home, the preacher back home, nobody's gonna know about this, and you're kind of smug about it. And it maybe happens overseas, which would happen a lot, I would dare say. And generally, people are drawn to power. Henry Kissinger said power is the ultimate aphrodisiac, and he was always was with a smoke show, and he was just a little short, goofy looking guy. He wasn't no better looking than me, but he was always with some, whatever. But the, then you go to you're in a committee room or something, or you're getting ready to make a tough vote. It's a big bill, and you're going one way, and it's against the current a little bit, and somebody comes up, probably somebody or trust, says, "Hey, man, hey, how you doing?" He says, "Hey, are you in a motel room with in Istanbul or out here in D.C. somewhere, and did you hook up with some girl?" And you're thinking, "Oh no." And the first thought is, how do they know this? Second is, I can't let this out. And they said, "Dude, we don't want this out." And they go, "Oh yeah, I don't want this out." And they said, "Well, man, if you can help us with this bill, voting this way, if you can do that, I can guarantee you that is going to go away." And then boom, guess what? They got the hooks in you and they own you. Nowadays, sexual proclivity is not as frowned upon because we're morally corrupt. And you got a wife and or a girlfriend, wife at home, a girlfriend up here, and they might have them a really nice no-show job, and it's all legal. It's all legal, and but it's not ethical or moral, and that's how they own you. I mean, seriously, these guys up here, gals, some of them, you wouldn't hire them to work the third shift at the Krispy Kreme donuts. They got family members that work in the defense industry. I mean, do you think a multi-billion-dollar corporation cares about a $100,000 or a $200,000 no-show job? I mean, it's just pennies to them, and then they own you, and that's how it's done now, and it's all within the system, and it's legal, and maybe they're all qualified for these jobs, but my wife always reads about the extremely good fortune of some of my colleagues making 600% return on their investments, and their family members have all these great jobs, and she laughs and says, "Honey, if you could just be a little bit crooked," and knowing that we're not, but it's just, and it's not all of them. It's not all of them. It's not every chairman, and it's not one party versus the other, but it just seems a lot of these folks up here are able to pull this off. And I make skateboards, okay? It's cheaper than a psychiatrist. I don't sleep much at night, and I go out in my barn, from 10 till 2 or 3 in the morning, I'll work on my skateboard. So I give one to Tulsi Gabbard. It was pretty cool skateboard. I made it out of banana plant fibers, and which I got a bag of it right here. Everybody thinks it's a bag of weed, but it's actually, and I make a little rope and strings out of it. And bamboo and some red oak I got off of a pallet. I always recycle stuff. And I gave her this skateboard. And so now everybody over the world literally is saying, hey man, I love a Burchett board. Can you get me a Burchett board? And I was like, cool. So I go down to ethics and I say, hey, I got this business thing. Can I do this? And they say, well, you gotta, you go through, and it listed all these hoops I got to jump through. So I can basically hide this business from you, the public, but it's technically legal then. And I said, so wait a minute, dude. I tell this attorney, so you're telling me I can do insider stock trading up here as a member of Congress, but I can't sell a dadgum skateboard? And that's what we're at right now. And that's where we're at. And that's why people like me are very unpopular. And I'm not suicidal, in case I show up tomorrow with...
That's important.
In case I show up tomorrow with 12 bullet holes in the back of my head. Oh, he shot himself.
So, it seems like there's an overwhelming network of blackmail within the House of Representatives. Would you say that's accurate?
No, I don't think it's overwhelmingly. I don't think it's overwhelming, and I think it's very subtle. You don't need. A lobbyist told me one time in Nashville. I was in the legislature 16 years. He said, he was very, very kind to me. He said, Burchett, he said, I don't need every member of the House or the Senate. I don't need the governor. I just need one chairman.
Without saying any names, can you walk me through a specific example that you have seen firsthand where someone has tried to sway a congressman or a chairman to their side of the spectrum using these blackmail tactics?
No, because if I did, it would, and it's all just my vibe and my feelings towards that. But God's given you a good brain. You can research it yourself. But because it doesn't, it's not going to change anything. If I call somebody out and have I seen them hook up with a prostitute or seen somebody hand somebody an envelope of cash? Well, heck no. It happens too much. I mean, we have members that resign and get in trouble. I mean, just recently, I'll give you one quick example. I was on the Benny show one time. It was early on. He didn't have a gajillion followers, and I wasn't really in the internet much. And I talked about that, the honeypot, where you get hooked up on somebody, and they called me out on it. Burchett, you can't be saying this stuff. People are mad. And then the very next week, a Chinese prostitution ring was busted here in Washington, D.C. It was a big story. And then it just went away. And they said their client lists were politicians, government officials, and lobbyists. And they said that in the dadgum article. And the next week, you couldn't find it. The black book, everything was gone. So, and you can Google that.
Insider trading seems to be a big topic for many in the House of Reps. Talk to me about what you're doing to combat that, because I think you've been making...
Apparently, I'm not going to be able to do much because this town doesn't want it. Either party doesn't. You're privileged to a lot of information up here, and you can make decisions on that. And I just say, look, more people play professional baseball than in the dadgum United States Congress. It's a privilege. Every time you get off that airplane, if you don't look at that dome on the Capitol and get chills, you need to get your ass back home and quit, because it's not worth it. And I'm tired of hearing congressmen say how much this job is costing them to be here. Well, dadgummit, go home. Don't do it. Go home and make 600% on your returns, and if that's how great, go work on Wall Street. The bill I have just says you can't own stocks. You got to put them in a mutual fund. I got a couple of friends that advise me on my stuff, Andy Venable and Tommy Seiler. Mutual fund at a $12,000, which I cashed out, send my daughter to school for her first year partially. I still had in the hole for a little more. But anyway, but I'm not bitter. But that's what you ought to do, is on a dadgum mutual fund. Individual stocks. And now the new bill says, well, you can keep your portfolio, but you just can't buy any more stocks. Well, if you got a $20 million portfolio, you're going to vote for stuff. Here's the issue. Here's the bill. Here's the deal. We sent our missile defense system to Ukraine, and so we had to replenish ours. Multi-billion-dollar no-bid contract. Who owns stock in? Who do you think some people that own stock in that? Members of Congress on both sides of the aisle. Members of Congress on both, and it's public record and it's legal. That is wrong. That is crooked as a dog's leg. And there's all other scenarios, and you know, when this airs, they're gonna come see me. Say, Burchett, man, you can't say that kind of stuff. And I say, but it's the truth, right? And they'll go, yeah, it's the truth. We just don't want you saying it. And I'm sick of it, man. I'm sick of it. And it's not every member. They own stock, and the vast majority of them are legitimate. When somebody day in and day out, and they make hundreds of stock trades in a year, and day in and day out make 500-600% return.
Yeah,
that ain't happening, dude.
Interesting. If I could just pivot to one more question.
These people wouldn't advise you on how to set up a dadgum garage sale, much less your stock portfolio if they're worth millions of dollars.
If I could just pivot to one more question before we wrap up here. There's been a lot of conversation regarding UAPs.
Yeah.
Extraterrestrial life.
UFO, sure.
UFOs. I think there's a huge debate between whether or not we're being visited by extraterrestrial life, or if this is some kind of military defense project by a company, say.
Let me stop you right there. All right, it's not Russia. If it was Russia, they would not be bogged down in Ukraine if they had this kind of technology. If it's China, they'd own us. I dare say they might own us right now with the greed of this town and the lobbyists, but it's not them, and it's not ours, because we would not put our military fighting men and women in that kind of harm's way with a $500 million aircraft and the millions upon millions of dollars it takes to train these pilots. And they're not like these cowboys they show on television. Most of them are eggheads. I mean, they are mathematical geniuses, because they're doing all kinds of things in their heads, and it's not just a joystick and woohoo, you know.
What if it's not manned by a pilot?
There's no capability. That we have zero capabilities of that kind of thing. I mean, we're talking about things that go hundreds of miles an hour underwater, things that can hover. We have no energy source that something could hover from 2 to 6 hours and then take off at such a rate of speed that we've had sworn testimony that the energy that would take would run Los Angeles for a year, kind of thing. It's just unbelievable, and it's not. And nothing, and you could not survive in that. You're literally, you would turn into a ketchup package. I mean, that's gross, but that's why the plasma thing and the orbs are very fascinating. But but there's laws of physics that define some of this stuff, and some of it was quantum physics is one. I mean, you got this thing that can vibrate here and be instantaneously over here. So I'd say there's scientific arguing back and forth, and of course I said if they would not come to Washington, obviously, because there is no intelligent life down here.
Okay. Well, it sounds, sorry to keep it going, but it sounds like you're under the impression it is extraterrestrial life.
Yeah, I am.
You are.
I don't think it's us. I mean, do you think we're the best that God can do? We are one grain of sand in a billion beaches.
Have you seen anything? Any files? Any pictures? Any reports?
Absolutely.
And can you talk about this publicly?
Absolutely not. And that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. And I told President Trump that on the morning of the State of the Union, very early at 6:05 in the morning, that we were, that it needs to peel, it's like layers of an onion. You just start peeling it back.
One final question. Would the world look at itself differently should they see the things that you have?
I would think so. I would think they would. I mean, for a short while, we always are going to go back to feudal fighting. You know, take away all the weapons in the world, everything would be great for about a week, and then somebody would figure out how to throw a rock at somebody, and then it would just start all over again. I think it's just human nature. But we are not the best that God can do, and I do not think we are alone.
Congressman Burchett, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank
I
you,
really
brother.
appreciate it. Thank you.